Hi everybody, my name is Joyce from Salubrious events, and today I've got a very special guest from the US. His name is Captain Randy Cramer, also known as Captain Kaye, and I'm really excited. Just a little bit of an overview if you don't know much about him. There is a group coming out now in the UFO field called the Super Soldiers and the Secret Space Program. The experiences coming out all have very similar experiences, but also they've got their own unique experiences as well. From a young age, they are taken to a military base, and they get trained to become, I guess, a soldier or some sort of espionage training, and then put back into their bodies, and usually they serve around 20 years, usually on Mars or on the moon, and then they, at the end of the 20 years, they get put back into their bodies. Either their soul is put back into their bodies or a clone is made at the age where they were taken, and using time travel they get put back. And it sounds really out there, and it is out there. I can't say that, that it's 100% true or 100% false, but what I know is that it is a phenomenon that is growing. And just to give my perspective, when I was in my teens, I read a book by Whitley Strieber called Communion, and he talked about his abductions. You'll probably recognize it on the cover of the book. It's probably one of the first pictures that had gone, I guess, the early start of when the pictures of Greys started going out in public. He had a painting on the cover of the book. So the book was very frightening, because he really described what he went through, and it wasn't fun. And I remembered really feeling for him and trying to put myself in his shoes and thinking how terrifying it would have been to experience something so out there, so extraordinary, and no one else can help you. Like, nobody know what it is, and trying to get help. If you go to the mental health professionals, they'll probably give you a diagnosis, put you on medication, but what if that didn't even help, and the abductions keep coming and you get bruises and missing time? So things don't make sense, and that would be very terrifying and isolating, and the ridicule that you receive as well, just because the experiences you've had is so out there. So I really felt for him, and I try to keep an open mind. And years now, so fast forward to now, his story isn't really that out there or unique anymore, because so many people have come out with their experiences, and there's a lot more support for these sort of experiences. So just to keep that in mind, that maybe many years from now, the Super Soldiers Secret Space Program projects might come out, and there may be more proof or validation that would come out in the future. But this is in the early stages, I would say. And so I'm keeping an open mind. If this triggers you, then you don't have to watch it. But if you're intrigued, please keep watching. So Randy Cramer first came out, his first interview was in 2006 with Eve Logan, and he wanted to be anonymous back then, and then he came out with more interviews with the alias name Captain Kaye, but now he's coming out as Randy Cramer, which is his true name, and he's done numerous interviews. So in the interview with him today, I'm not going to go over I'll try not to go over the same ground by introducing his background, because you can listen to so many other interviews about it. But I'll read out a current bio from him. So Captain Randy Cramer, also known as Captain Kaye, is an American covert military space program officer. He honorably served a 30-year career from the bottom ranks to the status of pilot and the rank of captain in the US Marine Corps Special Section. This organization was set up by the late US President Dwight Eisenhower in 1954. As a soldier deployed to the Martian Colonial System and beyond, Randy talks openly and in great detail about his memories and the recovery of them after a routine security memory wipe. He recorded spending his youth in a training program called Project Moonshadow, followed by a 30-year military career deployed to Mars to the EDF-SS Nautilus as a pilot, and later to the EDF-SS Farragut for a special operations deployment far beyond our solar system. At the end of his career, as per standard security protocol, he was age regressed, memory wiped, and was brought back in time to 15 minutes after he'd left for deployment. Randy appears on several interviews on Gaia TV and has done numerous interviews with various personalities in the UFO, ET, and exopolitics field for nearly a decade now. His passion is teaching psionic skills, intergalactic trade, and educating the public about ET, human terrestrial affairs, and the future of a planet with open borders and trade to the intergalactic community, and the inevitable consequences of such grand steps into an even grander future for planet Earth and all of her inhabitants. So without further delay, I will bring in Randy. Oh, I can see Sedona at the back, the picture.
Yeah, that is an actual photograph too. So
yeah, oh right. Yeah, lovely. It's nice. How's it going in your new place?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Very lovely. Yeah. Yes. I'm loving it here.
Okay. It's one of my favorite places in the US.
It's definitely one of my favorite places now.
Yeah. Yeah, the energy is pretty intense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got some questions from the Australian audience, but also whether you wanted to give anything, you know, an update or anything new. You said you recovered another 10 years of memories.
Yeah.
Talk about that, but, you know, up to you.
I mean, not particularly.
Okay, fair enough.
Nothing I mean, if people have questions about it, I can answer questions about it, but I don't really just want to talk about it, as most things that I don't enjoy talking about. But
okay.
Service, I mean, I talk about service stuff, but it's not my favorite topic because it's traumatizing. It's not fun to remember all the times you got to kill people and got your arms and legs blown off. So
fair enough. Yeah. 30 years sound like a lot. Like, you know, I think previously we thought 20 years was the maximum that they could do it before.
Well, I mean, that's standard. A 20-year tour is standard. And it just turns out that they liked me so much they kept me for an extra 10 years. So.
Wow. Okay.
I was very good at my job.
Yeah, you must be. These are questions that I've gathered from people I know from in Australia. Yeah. So the first lot are more from the skeptics.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Bring it on.
Okay, yeah. All right. So the first question is, why would the US Marine Corps go through all the trouble of, you know, time and expenses to abduct civilians, clone a body, and use time travel and time wipe to put them back in their body when they could just use someone who is expendable or just use a clone?
Well, first of all, because clones are stupid. So you can't really use clones for that purpose. Second of all, I wasn't a civilian. I was genetically engineered to be a Marine. So that was my job from before I was even born, really. And it's incredibly expensive to train these people, but it's also because you are training people who have certain genetic distinctions. So you can't just pull people from the general pool usually, because by the time, like, if someone joins the regular services even at 17 or 18 years old, that's way too late to begin the training that we have to start when we're, toddlers. So the training program has to start way, way before the normal lawful age begins. Can't use clones because they're stupid. And it wasn't as if I was being kidnapped as a civilian, because that is not the case. I know some people say things like that. In my case, that was never the case. I was never kidnapped or abducted or forced to do this against my will. I was genetically engineered from the get-go to do this job.
Okay. So why do they allow you to have this sort of life as you are now and not keep you on Mars or the solar system to carry on as a soldier?
Standard protocol is when someone finishes their tour to send them back where you picked them up from, the point where they were deployed from, so that they can live out make a little air quotes here, live out their life as per what is supposed to be not interfering with their destiny, even though it completely interferes with their destiny, but they get away with it on paper by putting people back right after they take them for their deployment.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense. I don't know if I answered that right, but does that make sense?
But so there's a protocol where they have to do that. They can't just leave people with
I mean, and you can't just use people forever. I mean, people do have a sort of limit to how effective they are in the field for decades and decades and so on. And so there's a certain point where people are just done and you want to get the new fresh recruits in there to do their job next. So I'm like a third generation augment. They're up to like generation 7 or something like that now. So the generation 7 augments have all kinds of bells and whistles that we didn't have when I started my tour.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So this question you've probably been asked a lot. What proof or evidence do you have for your claims, of being in the US Marine Corps, being on Mars and the moon? So I guess you get asked that a lot. So.
Oh, yeah, I certainly do. So the best proof that I can offer is that impersonating an officer is a felony. Lying about duty stations, awards, and certificates is also a felony. Defrauding the public is a felony. If I were lying, I would be committing a number of felonies and I would be investigated by the FBI and I would be arrested for fraud. I've been doing this for almost 10 years, so that hasn't happened because I am telling the truth. And I have also passed a polygraph, which are 98% plus effective. So I have done my due diligence where I can, and people who understand the law understand that I could not be doing this if I were lying. I would be arrested. Okay,
great. Yep. And I think people forget that when you're in these circumstances, you don't think, oh, I have to get evidence, or can I smuggle something back, or I think.
I know people love to ask that question, but there's no way to smuggle anything back. Even if I had tucked a rock up my butt, they would have found it and pulled it out, and I still wouldn't have been able to bring it back. So there's no bringing stuff back.
Yeah, sure. And how would you go about trying to get documented evidence of your employment? I think you've been trying to do that for many years.
We're in a paperwork case, which is just filing paperwork and essentially going to the different records departments and asking them if they have it, which so far everybody we ask doesn't, but we know that. We know the archive that they're in, but we can't go to that archive until we've gotten rejection letters from all of the other archives. So we're still in the process of getting all the rejection letters so that we can go to the archive that actually has. Wait, hold on. I don't know why my phone started doing that.
Wow.
Somebody pushed the button without me touching it. But okay.
Oh, okay.
My phone. This is like the third phone I've had to go through. My phone gets hacked on a regular basis, and when I was in Toronto, someone hacked my phone and deleted my micro SD card and everything, and it was fun.
Wow.
Yeah. It just happens on a semi-regular basis. It's whatever. We have people that don't like me. It's whatever. They can kiss my ass.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's good that you persist and carry on and not give up.
I'm a Marine. I don't give up easy. So, you know, people can poke and prod and they can try and hack my phone or my computer and, you know, give me the evil eye or whatever. I don't give a fuck. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Those people don't matter. Those people don't matter to me. So.
Right. Okay. Oh, except your loved ones, of course.
You know, no one has really come after any of my loved ones or my family members. They should know better. If they do, then, you know, our people will come down on them like a hammer. So.
Okay, good. All right. So again, just about the photo of the L, you know. Explain a bit more about that. You know, some guy. Yeah, some people are saying that that photo was taken from the artist, and
So the basic explanation was that I was given a whole series of photos by someone who used to work for NASA and had said to me that, oh, I got these through a back door. And I had no intention of showing them to the general public. I was giving a lecture, had a few extra minutes, and everyone was begging me to show them. And I was like, all right, I'll show them, with the caveat that I said that we think that probably 95% of the photos that we have are probably good, but there may be 5% of them that might not be. And I stated that before I showed them. And someone who I did not give permission to took those photos and put them on the internet from camera shots that they took. And then, you know, without the explanation that I had said, not all of these pictures are probably solid. So, you know, I had stated that when I showed them. And what I also stated when I showed the picture of the female L, I said, look, my brigadier even suggested that there's a good chance that this photo is a CGI version, but we think it's such a good rendition of what this species looks like that I wanted to show it anyway. So no one gets to hear that explanation when it gets thrown all over the internet. And everyone, hey, you showed that. And it's like, if you had been there and heard me explain and give that little, you know, disclosure, disclaimer, then, you know, people would understand that I in no way showed that in such a way that I was saying this is 100% a certain photo that is absolutely real and not computer generated. I never stated that, never said that. It was never supposed to get out into the world. But because the person who had given me the images, we suspected that their pipeline of information was being tainted. So I took the photos anyway, and I was like, all right, I'll show them to everybody for fun. And then, like I said, I made that disclaimer when I showed them, and whoever was at that conference and took those pictures and spread them out did not make that disclaimer or explain what I explained when I showed them. So that's my explanation. I never at any point attempted to take that photo and take credit for it or say that it wasn't potentially a CGI image. I never said any of those things to anyone who was there. So it's one of those things that once it got out on the internet and people started saying stuff about it, like trying to correct something once it's been misunderstood, can be more, you know, time consuming than just trying to get it right the first time. So anyway, I can take responsibility for what I did, and I did nothing wrong, never misrepresented myself or misrepresented the evidence or misrepresented the photographs. To the people who I was showing them to, I made it very clear that we felt that most of them were probably good and that there were a few that either were not good or had been computer generated images. And that photo in particular, I explained, we thought was probably a CGI image, but again, it was so good that we thought we would show it to people anyway. So,
sure, it really is a very beautiful photo or picture, and I had a look at the guy who apparently did it. All his other pictures did not match up. Like, you know, all his other pictures, you can tell very clearly it was computer generated. But this one, at first glance, you think, whoa, you know, this looks so much like a photo.
Well, and it was head and shoulders above any of the other work that he did as well. Because I remember someone sent me the link some years later and was like, hey, I found, you know, where this picture came from. I was like, oh, cool. And I went to the page. I looked at the same guy's page and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because most of his stuff is kind of mediocre. But that image, I was like, wow, that's like, you know, Hollywood quality work. Yeah. So,
and I'm surprised he hasn't done more like that, you know. And also he hasn't put his artist mark on it, which I would if I took all the time and effort to do such a beautiful picture. I would put my artist mark on it. So yeah,
you'd think.
Right.
So yeah,
mm.
it's a murky area anyway. So who knows whether it was an actual photograph that was then altered with CGI, or whether it's an original CGI image, whether someone gave it to him and he posted it as one of his own. Because it doesn't really match up the quality of his other work, and he certainly didn't have a bunch of stuff after that just showing that he had leveled up as a computer graphic artist. So it's a murky topic for sure.
It is. Okay, this I think has been commented before. If your DNA was meant to be superior, then why did you have to wear glasses to see?
Because eye strain still happens to people who read a lot.
Yes.
My vision used to be better, and then it got worse, and it's getting better again. Every time I go to the eye doctor, I actually get a weaker prescription. So even my eye doctor thinks that at some point I won't need these glasses anymore because they're improving. So.
Okay. What would you say to people who say that would want to know whether you data mined Corey Good's story? Which I think Corey Good's story is very different from yours anyway, but
let me put it this way. I've passed a polygraph. Corey has refused to take a polygraph. You tell me which person is the more honest of those two people. I would also say to that I started talking before he did. I gave my first interview before he did. So if anybody data mined anybody, it was the other way around.
Yes. If you've spent so much time in space, there would likely to be severe physical and immune consequences. How do you explain how you could have survived so long without severe effects?
Because we use gravity plating. So we're not in a 0G environment. The ships and the bases have gravity plating that mimics a 1.0 G. So all those effects that come from being in zero gravity are not affected on us.
Okay. All right, cool. Why are all these whistleblowers doing everyone's dirty work? Why doesn't your brigadier do his own disclosure?
Because he has signed a stack of secrecy agreements, which make it impossible for him to do that, which was why they went through a selection process to pick a public relations officer to do this job, which is me. So again, and I like to clarify this, I am not a whistleblower. I am not a person who is doing this without the sanction of my superiors. My superiors asked me to do this, have given me full legal sanction to do this. I am not a whistleblower.
Oh, okay, sure.
I am the public relations officer for the command staff of United States Marine Corps Special Section as per instructed and given orders by my superiors. Well, they asked nicely and I said yes, but they're the equivalent of still receiving actual orders. So I'm not a whistleblower, and I am not even doing this, excuse me, and I'm not doing this of my own accord. I am doing it at their request.
Okay, all right, yep, sure. So that's probably why is it Julian Smith? Is that your British? Smythe. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You know, a few people have said they've Googled his name and he's not on the internet. But I'm thinking, well, if he's in covert operations,
he wouldn't be, and neither would any of the other senior officers in covert military space programs. None of them would be on the internet or and available in a public record search ever. Yeah. So. Duh. I mean, people say that a lot, and my response is, why would you think that you would find it? What makes you think that would be on the internet? There's all kinds of classified information and lists of names of military personnel that are not available on the internet. Of even other. I mean, you can't get online and Google. Like, what are the names of the guys in SEAL Team 7? Like, you can't do that. It's, you won't find them. It's not on the internet because it's classified.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's how it works.
So it just blows my mind when people say, I Googled it and I couldn't find it. It's like, why would you think that you would get that information off the internet in the first place?
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Not available.
But I thought, Yeah, I had to ask.
Oh,
These
no,
are
sure,
my
of course.
questions.
I'm happy to answer the
Yeah,
skeptical questions because
yes,
I've answered most of them a million times before. And
yes,
some of them, I'll just be honest, are not very well thought out
yeah,
questions. But,
yeah.
you know,
I
I'll
agree.
answer them because people are often reaching for stuff when they're being skeptical.
Yeah,
And so they're reaching for things to try and find holes in an argument that there really aren't any holes to argue about. But, you know, whatever.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, here's another question. Why are you only raising 70,000 for the holographic med beds? Wouldn't it be more in the millions to get such a technology going?
Oh, yeah. The person who set up that for me was essentially attempting to raise some funds so that I could put more full-time work into that. My CFO right now for the research and development project is actually in a process to raise about 25 million for the first phase.
Okay.
So we're dealing with that in another way, and it's not something that we're asking the general public for or trying to raise funds from the general public for, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
To try and do that. And so we're going through sources that, you know, we'll have the phase 1 funding that we need, the phase 2 and the phase 3 funding, because there's essentially 3 phases of funding that we have to go through. That's just the phase 1 is about 25 million. Phase 2 is about another 25 million. Phase 3 is going to be somewhere between 150 and 200 right now.
Right. Which phase are you in that now? Is it
We are still in phase 1.
All right. How's it going? Like what's the progress?
You know, we're moving along. It's tedious though, and
Yeah.
you know, we haven't gotten the secured funds yet, but you know, I am hopeful that the people I have working on it know the people that they're talking to, and you know, we're making headway with those people. Let me put it this way: we're making headway. But
Yeah.
people who have a lot of money to fund for those types of things, you know, don't just drop $25 million because you ask for it. You know, there's a lot of back and forth before someone's going to agree to drop that kind of money.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, out of interest, there were a lot of problems with cloned animals, i.e. health problems. This person's curious as to whether a regrown human limb would suffer the same complications. Would the brain recognize a regrown limb, considering regrowing limbs is not part of human evolution? Just how long will they need to be in the machine? Are they under sedation? Is it painful? What happens if it does not regrow properly? Do they cut it off and start again? That's a few questions.
That's a lot of questions. First of all, it's nothing like the cloning process at all. So there's no effect that is similar to what's happening in cloning that would happen. You are basically telling the person's body to regrow their own tissue. So it's not a process that's foreign to the human body. It is a process that happens through the human body. So you're just telling the body to regenerate its own cells, and you're doing it in such a way that it breaks the rules a little, where if I normally had my arm blown off at my elbow, you know, I continue to have cellular growth here, but when it gets to this airspace, it goes, oh, there's no more arm there. With this technology, the cells continue to think that there's an arm to keep growing into, so the cells just keep replicating. And as far as how long it takes, it depends on a number of things. The phase 1 of the technology will probably be very slow, and a person would have to get a series of treatments that would be adding tissue every time they get a treatment. They do have to sit very, very still. They are usually not under sedation, but in some cases it's smart to give them a tranquilizer or a muscle relaxer so that they're very calm and they're not twitchy at all, because they do have to sit very still. It's not painful. And again, the amount of time that it would take would depend on exactly what phase of the technology that we've developed, because the initial phase that we want to do is going to be way more primitive than the technology that we used when I was in the military, which was much faster. Mm-hmm. But we know how to make it faster once we have the fundamental technology in place. So then we'll start adding the things that we know that will make that a quicker process in order to cut those treatment times down. But there's no way that I could answer right now how long that would take to regenerate however many cubic centimeters of tissue.
Okay. Is it painful?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, not in any way, shape, or form. No.
And the other question, if it doesn't grow properly, do you cut it off and start again?
No, it grows properly.
Okay. Okay.
That's not a problem. That's not a problem that we have. When the technology is working properly, you don't have mutations and, you know, weird deformities happen. It grows pretty much the same way. If you know, if you sliced your finger, and in order for those cells to regenerate and regrow, you know, it's not really a painful process. It might be itchy sometimes when the cells regrow, but
Yeah.
you know, normally we
Yeah.
don't have issues where your finger's going to get deformed trying to heal damaged tissue. So it's the same thing here. There's no way really for it to grow wrong. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty much 100% effective when it
Right.
works. It's 100%. There's nothing that we have ever seen that it can't repair, and we have never seen problems in the regrowing regeneration process at all. It's pretty much 100% effective.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So does that mean, you know, we have in our DNA, it is natural, like to actually regrow, like our bodies have that intelligence to naturally regrow?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
know people through self-mastery techniques who have regrown fingers, teeth, a woman that had a hysterectomy that regrew a whole nother uterus.
Wow.
I have a friend of mine who was born with super short pinky fingers, and she's been growing out her pinky fingers to get longer because they were, you know, little dwarfed. So it is possible through self-mastery techniques to regrow and repattern your own DNA and your own cellular structure and do it all on your own. It just takes longer and a lot more mental focus to get there. We would like to make a machine that does that instead of having to tell people to, you know, regrow their own body parts back. But it's completely possible, and I know people who have done that themselves. Yeah.
So what do they do in general to regrow?
That would take a longer explanation of what actual self-mastery techniques are. So
Okay.
self-mastery techniques, I do teach them in my psionics class.
Yes.
And there are other people around the world who teach self-mastery techniques who, you know, you could use the same techniques to do the same thing and regrow tissue, but they're not all the same. Not all operating systems are the same, and it's not something I could even attempt to describe in an hour.
Yeah.
It takes
Sure.
longer to explain and to teach people self-mastery techniques than that. So
Sure.
the shortest answer I can give, it happens, people do it all the time, but you have to learn some special techniques to make it happen, and I don't have time to explain those in this conversation.
Yep.
So my psionics class is like a 3-day class.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I know other schools that can teach it in a 5 or a 6-day class. So
Yeah.
it's not
Right.
something that you can learn in an hour, 2 hours. There's a lot of understanding how the brain works, how your DNA works, how you rewire brain tissue, how you rewire and reprogram DNA and stuff. And it's a little complicated, but not impossible for anybody to learn.
Sure. Okay. Sounds very hopeful.
Oh yeah,
Very,
like I
very
said, I know
positive.
people have made some amazing accomplishments with it. So
Yeah. Here's another question. Are you going to get accredited by the health authorities? What company is actually going to manufacture it, and what cost is per machine? Well, at what cost per machine?
there's no way for us to be able to say what the cost per machine is at this point, but you know, it'll probably be less than it takes to manufacture an MRI machine, but you know, probably quite a bit more than an X-ray machine, to give, you know, some kind of a brackets there. But there's no way for me to predict at this moment without a prototype and doing a cost analysis to, you know, on the individual parts, what they cost to manufacture, who we're going to use for manufacturing, or whether we're going to build our own factory and do our own manufacturing, what the labor costs, machine costs, you know, factory costs will be. There's no way that I can answer that right now. There's too many calculations that we haven't been able to make yet.
Sure.
But like I said, less than an MRI machine. So it's going to be cost effective in the sense that the machine will cost less than current technology costs that doesn't do nearly as much. So
Uh-huh.
But it's not, I've heard people say things who are, I think, erroneously claiming to have access to similar or type technology, who are talking about being able to manufacture an entire unit for, what did I hear someone say, $25,000. I think that is absolute ludicrous poppycock
Yeah.
for someone to suggest that they're going to be able to build a miraculous healing device for 25K. I don't think that's reasonable or correct at all, but we haven't done that cost test yet. But it'll probably be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. You can fix anything. So,
Yes.
you know, it's worth it.
Yes.
Fix anything.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely.
People don't need organ replacement surgeries anymore, because you can just restore the cellular structure of damaged organs, misaffected organs, and any and all body parts can be fixed and regenerated. And I mean, it's a scalable technology too. So we'll be able to make much smaller devices for like hands and feet, and, you know, small, you know, dermal abrasions, cuts, burns, and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's scalable. So the smaller scale technology to treat smaller wounds will be much cheaper and much easier to distribute, and way more accessible than a full body unit, which really you're only going to need for organ replacement, regrowing limbs, or full body diseases like, you know, lymphoma and cancer and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And the health authorities, are they going to accredit it?
You know, that's a question that we're just going to have to sort out over time. So we're pretty certain that we will have some obstacles with some people, but once we have a functional prototype, people are going to want it. So if we have a problem with the accreditors going straight to the hospitals, because hospitals will see the technology, understand that they can treat more patients, and let's just be honest, most hospitals are on a profit motive, and they don't do things for free, you know, to everybody. They have to make money. And so when a hospital sees that they can have a treatment machine that can treat anything, then that hospital understands that that will be more revenue for them to fix things that they otherwise can't treat. So they're going to want them. So we'll be able to apply pressure to get the accreditation, even if there's some obstacle there. But it's having a functional prototype that will make everybody insist that we are able to get it to the general public, because too many people who've got friends, family who, you know, are crippled, blind, have, you know, organs that need to replace, or dying, that can be cured and live healthy lives with this technology. So people will insist upon it. And the people who want to heal people, and doctors and hospitals will want the technology, because it's going to make more profits for their hospitals. They're going to be more well-paid, you know, medical healers for that. So they're going to want it eventually too.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone will eventually want it.
I think we need it. It's going to change our lives and the quality of our lives. It sounds amazing. What's the name? What was the name of them? Those beds when you were in your deployment?
We just called it a hollow bed, because it uses a holographic projector.
Okay, just hollow bed.
Yeah.
Have you heard of ISIS? A regeneration bed called ISIS?
No, I have not heard of that. So
okay, all right.
And again, I have heard some people claiming things that I don't think they are claiming is true. So without more details, that just may be someone who's claiming erroneous, fraudulent things about devices that they don't actually have and can't build. But I don't know that. I don't want to say that without knowing anything about it. I've never heard of it. Okay. So I have yet for anybody to actually come to me and say, oh, here's a device that someone's building, or they're making, that actually works and it functions, and they're using it to, you know, restore people's organs, tissues, so forth. I'm hearing claims that people have ideas or things that are coming soon, but I have yet to see anything that's actually being used or works.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.